Boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over the top 10 sleeper cars / underrated cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now some of these cars are getting onto this list based on their performance and them actually being a really good car, but they are largely unknown as being a really good car. And some of the other vehicles on the list are just getting on here because they are underrated. Not many people know about them and more people should know about them. So I hope that makes sense. Anyway guys, let's hop into it, starting off with number 10. What the f? Anyway guys, let's start off with number 10. Alright guys, at number 10 we have the Volkart Fageloa, that's how I'm gonna pronounce that for reasons. Please don't cancel me. This car is super underrated. I never see anybody driving this thing and it's actually such a sick car. I customized this a few months ago and ever since then it has been a car that if anybody asks me to recommend them, like a rare sort of underrated car, this is one that I always tell people about. It is so cool. Now it actually has a lot of unique customization that you can do to it as well. I'm not gonna get into telling you guys all about the customization. If you really want to go check it out, you can check out my video on it or go and get it for yourself. However, the performance of this vehicle is actually surprising to me as well. This thing is absolutely slammed to the ground, so the performance as far as the handling goes is actually surprisingly good. This thing handles very nicely. A lot better than you would expect. Now, I'm really not sure what this car is based off of in real life, but I do like whatever it is. And you can do some really tasteful mods to it to make it just look clean. It just looks clean. I mean, I'm really happy with my customization of this thing. Obviously, if you guys go and make your own, you can make it look however you want, but this is how I've customized mine, and I'm pretty happy with it, honestly. I really like this customization. Overall, the Fageloa is a really good car. I would highly recommend picking this thing up, guys. If you guys want to take it to a car meet, this is going to be a pretty rare car, and you'll probably get some pretty good first impressions if you pull up in this thing, because I literally have never seen anybody else drive this car. So if you want a pretty underrated, a pretty rare car to bring to a car meet, this is going to be one for you. Anyway guys, that is it for number 10. Let's move on to number 9. Alright guys, next up at number 9 we have the Vapid Blade. And when I first customized this car, I was absolutely shocked by the performance. This thing handles really well, accelerates really well, looks really good. Overall, it is a great performing vehicle, and it is a absolute unit on the drag strip. Now, don't get me wrong, you're not going to be beating supercars with this thing. However, it is a very good drag racer. As you guys can see, of course, it is a muscle car, so you can make it do a wheelie, which is very nice. And as you guys can see, it's actually pretty damn quick. Now, I wish I had another car to race against here so I could really show you guys just how fast this thing is, but you'll have to take my word for it. This car is actually super quick. It is no slouch at all, and the handling of it is also very good. Honestly, it like understeers ever so slightly, but the understeer actually makes it so that this thing handles really well. I don't know how to explain that because understeer is terrible, but you'll just have to take my word for it or go and drive the car yourself and just test it out, because man, this car is absolutely sick. The Vapid Blade is one of my favorite cars that I've customized this year. Now, unfortunately, I don't drive it because it's just not the fastest car ever. And usually if I'm going into GTA Online, I'm gonna drive something armored so I don't get absolutely nuked, which is unfortunate because if I didn't have to do that, I would probably be driving the Vapid Blade. This is one of the most surprising cars that I customized last year, and honestly, I mean, a lot of the time I will get rid of cars that I've customized, but this thing has stayed in my garage the entire time. It has never left, and it will never leave my garage because it is just such a good car. Anyway guys, that is it for number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Alright guys, next up at number 8 we have the Bravado Grassley. Now this is another car that I will recommend to people if they want an underrated car in Grand Theft Auto Online. The Bravado Grassley is based off of the Dodge Durango, and I've personally built mine to look like a Durango SRT. However, unfortunately, we don't have like a Grassley Sport in the game or anything like that yet, at least. So for right now, we just kind of have to make do with the regular Grassley. With that being said though, this car is actually really solid. Now, it's not going to be the fastest vehicle ever, but it is a really underrated one. You never see other players driving this thing ever in Grand Theft Auto Online. In addition to that, the Grassley actually has some pretty decent customization that you can do to it, and a lot of people don't know that. On top of that, the performance of this SUV is definitely above average, However, it's not going to be fast enough to win any races in the SUVs category with it. However, in free mode, it is actually a pretty fast vehicle, which of course is nice to have when you're just cruising around. Overall, the grassley is just really underutilized in Grand Theft Auto Online, and I definitely think that this thing is worth checking out if you guys have not checked it out before. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for number 8. Let's move on to number 7. Alright guys, next up at number 7, we have a super underappreciated car, which is of course the Chevelle Fugitive. Now the Chevelle Fugitive is definitely not the fastest vehicle ever. It really doesn't have the greatest performance ever. However, it is a very cool looking vehicle, and a great feature about the car, perhaps the best feature about the entire car, is how it actually sounds. This is one of the best sounding cars in the entire game, I think, and it really has no reason to be, but it just is. Have a listen to this. So as you guys can clearly hear, the Chevelle Fugitive sounds very, very good. Now with that being said, when you actually do upgrade this vehicle, it is no slouch. It is actually pretty quick in a straight line, and the handling of it is really not that bad either. However, you're not going to win any races with this thing, simply because it's just a car that you can get off of the street for absolutely free. But with that being said, for a car that you can get off of the street for free, or from Southern San Andreas Super Autos for $24,000, it is a very, very solid vehicle in my opinion. I definitely think that a lot more people should check out the Chevelle Fugitive. It's so underrated. Anyway guys, that is it for number 7. Let's move on to number 6. Alright guys, next up at number 6 we have the Prairie. This car is so underrated. I never see anybody driving this thing, and I don't know why. I guess people just think that it's an average car that you can get off of the street. However, it actually has some really, really crazy customization options. As you guys can see, it has a livery on it. It has a spoiler option, it has rear bumper options, skirts, front bumper, hood. It has a ton of options that you can actually do to it, and I think that more people need to appreciate this car. Now, it's not the fastest car ever, however, it's also not the slowest either. And I do believe that if you took this thing to a car meet, you would definitely get some pretty crazy looks, and a lot of people probably would have absolutely no idea what this car even is. Now, the unfortunate part of the Prairie is it is not the best handling vehicle ever, and like I said, it is not the fastest either, but it's also not the slowest. It is front wheel drive, which makes the car understeer a lot, which maybe that's part of the reason why nobody drives this thing. But I feel like a lot of the reason that people don't drive this thing is because they just don't even know that you can do all this crazy customization to it, which is really unfortunate. But hopefully after people see this video, maybe you'll go out and give the Prairie a chance. This thing is pretty awesome. It's not the best handling car, but that's okay. We can look past the handling for the customization and for the straight line sort of performance. Not that the straight line performance is that great either, but hey, it's a pretty cool car, man. It's pretty cool. Anyway, guys, definitely go out and check out the Prairie. This thing is pretty sick. Definitely a car that I would recommend, especially if you don't have a lot of money in GTA, but you want a kind of cool car, or you want something that you can customize quite a bit. Anyway, guys, that is it for number 6. Let's move on to number 5. Alright, guys, next up at number 5, we have the Albany Alpha. This is a car that I used to own in Grand Theft Auto Online a very, very long time ago, and I've just recently picked it up again. This thing has a absolute ton of customization that you can do to it, and it is a pretty cheap car. This thing goes for $150,000 off of Legendary Motorsport, and it was actually added, I believe, with the High Life DLC. Now, the Alpha is a super underrated car, and it truly is a sleeper. This thing, when I first hopped into it, made me realize how much I had been underappreciating this car. It is actually ridiculously fast. This thing is so quick, so much quicker than I actually remember it even being back in the day when I used to have it. And since I've owned it again in GTA, I've just been shocked with the overall performance of this thing. It is actually fantastic. Now, this thing is in the sports category, and unfortunately, it's not fast enough to the point where you're actually going to win any races with it, but it is pretty damn quick. Now, I'm not saying this is one of the best looking cars ever, because honestly, there are parts of this car that are a little bit ugly. It might not be the best looking from every angle, but overall, the performance of it is extremely good. And I would definitely recommend that if you guys have a spare 150k lying around, that you at least just buy this car and keep it until you can customize it. Obviously, if you can customize it, then do that too. But the Alpha is just such an underrated car, guys. I think that this is definitely a must own from this list. If you want to pull up to a car meet in this thing, a lot of the players probably will actually know what this thing is if they've been around for a while. However, if they are a newer player, they will definitely not really know about this car. Overall, the Alpha is just just a super underrated performer. This thing is actually very, very good. Definitely would recommend picking this thing up, guys. Check it out for sure. Anyway, that is it for number 5. Let's move on to number 4. All right, guys, next up we have the Obey Tailgater. And for this one, I decided, well, to come to Michael's house because obviously this is the same car that Michael has in the campaign of GTA 5. The Obey Tailgater is a super, super underrated car as far as customization goes, especially in online. I know a lot of people have probably taken Michael's car in story mode and gone and customized it, but I feel like everyone forgot about it when it came to GTA Online. This thing goes for $55,000 on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, and for that price you get an absolutely awesome car to customize. This thing has so many different options, it's actually a great car, and the performance of it is actually not too bad given the price point. Obviously I have mine done in a cream color, and I have the carbon roof and pretty much every other carbon option on this thing as well. I personally really like the look of this vehicle overall. Now also for the price, like I mentioned, the performance is actually not too bad on this vehicle. Now you're not going to win any races because unfortunately this thing is in the sports car categories. So if you're planning on winning races, this car is not going to do that for you. Maybe in free mode and online versus like AI that don't have upgrades on their cars, you could probably beat a couple of them. Not sure how you're going to get them to race, but I'm sure you guys can figure that one out. Anyway guys, I think that's pretty much it for number 4. Let's move on to number 3. Alright guys, next up at number 3, we're getting into some real sleeper cars now. This is the Vapid Click. Now the Vapid Click was formerly the fastest car in the muscle cars category in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, and it was very largely unknown as being that. Every time you'd hop into a muscle cars race, you'd always see guys in the Hellfire, guys in the Dominator GTX, and you would very rarely see somebody in the Vapid Click. I was one of the guys in the Vapid Click, and let me tell you, this is maybe still the best handling muscle car in the entire game. The Bravado Buffalo STX has actually dethroned this thing as the fastest muscle car, which is kind of sad. However, the Vapid Click on a really twisty circuit could probably still hold its own against an STX in my opinion. It would definitely be a little bit slower on the straightaways, but that doesn't really matter too much. Now the reason that the Vapid Click is so fast and was so good in the muscle cars category is because, well, the muscle cars don't exactly handle very well. I'm sure that's maybe a bit of a stereotype with muscle cars. So when you get one that does handle really well, it stands out pretty easily, and it definitely can help you win some races to actually be able to go around the corners, especially without drifting the entire time. So the Vapid Click was really good at that, and it still is right now. Now this thing has some really unique customization options as far as the suspension goes, especially in the muscle cars category. You can absolutely slam this thing down to the ground, and the suspension option for this car actually changes the handling of it so significantly that it becomes really good from being actually a pretty terrible car when the suspension is actually raised all the way up. Now the Vapid Click is also a very bouncy sort of car, so a lot of people don't really like how it handles. I personally don't really mind it, but I am kind of used to the car as well. Now the Vapid Click also has an absolute ton of customization that you can do to it to make it your own, which I think is great. Obviously I have mine set up to be in a full racing livery with pretty much a full racing setup. It's got the roll cage in it, and it's got off-road tires on it as well because they help to increase cornering grip a little tiny bit. So obviously mine is set up for racing. You can set this thing up however you want to though. You can make it look really stealthy, do it in all black, and it would look really good. Anyway guys, that is it for number 3. Let's move on to number 2. Alright guys, next up at number 2 we have the Vapid Saddler. Now the reason that this thing is so high on the list is because it is the only car on this list that is actually at the top of its category when it comes to racing. So this thing is by far the fastest utility vehicle in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. If you take this thing into a utility race, which let's be honest, you're never going to do, but anyways, it will win very confidently every single time. It is so much faster than any other vehicle in the utility category that they will literally not even have a chance to win when they are facing you when you are driving the Saddler. Now on top of that, the Saddler actually has some unique options that you can get it with. Some of them will spawn with a rack like you can see on this one. Some of them will spawn with a bull bar on the front, and there are a few other variations that you can also get as well, which makes the Saddler kind of rare and kind of unique depending on the variation that you get it in. The one that you see right here that I actually have is one of the more rare sort of versions of it with the roof rack sort of thing on it. Now don't get me wrong, the Saddler may be fast in the utility category, but it is not very fast in any other sense at all. This thing is really slow, like really slow. However, based on some of the options that you can get this thing with, like I said, the rare sort of roof rack and the bull bar on the front of it, in addition to being the fastest vehicle in its own category, I think that that is deserving of this vehicle being on this list and being this high on the list as well. Overall, I really like my Saddler. I actually have multiple of these things. I have this one with the roof rack, and I also have one with the bull bar on the front of it. So I personally do actually like the Saddler quite a bit. Anyway guys, that is it for number 2. Let's move on to the best sleeper car in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. Alright guys, and at number 1 we have not only the greatest sleeper car in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, but also the greatest car in Grand Theft Auto Online. It is of course the Canis Seminal. Now, between its dashing looks and its incredible performance, this thing is very slept on. Somehow, I don't know how, but it is. The Canis Seminal is beautiful. One of the most elegant, greatest cars in all of Grand Theft Auto. Truly a staple of the Grand Theft Auto franchise. The Canis Seminal has no enemies, and it has never disappointed anyone ever in history. Simply listening to the exhaust note of this vehicle is enough to make anyone want to buy it. Truly an incredible noise. Not to mention the performance of the vehicle itself is absolutely incredible. This is actually the fastest car in all of Grand Theft Auto Online in a straight line and around a racetrack because it is so fast in a straight line. Handling. Of course, the handling of the Canis Seminal is also absolutely fantastic, as you guys will see right here on this corner. Look at... Hey. Obviously, as you guys saw, the Canis Seminal can easily challenge it. Whoa, it's gone. Okay. Alright. As you guys saw there, the Canis Seminal can easily challenge a much bigger opponent of a vehicle and stand up to it very well. As you can see, there's very little damage done to the front of this thing, despite actually slamming into a mule, which of course is a pretty large vehicle. Overall, the Canis Seminal is just insanely underappreciated in this game. I don't know why. The Seminal is truly the best car in the entire game, and you should all go and clear out a spot in your garage to actually put this thing in it. The Canis Seminal is truly amazing. Anyway guys, that is it for the top 10 sleeper / underrated cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. Let me know what you thought of my list in the comments down below. Leave a like if you are a Seminal embracer or you enjoyed the video, or you learned something. Dislike, of course, if you are a Seminal denier. Subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.